reminder that we are recording this session. I'll open us with a karakia. Mā te whakapono, mā te tūmanako, mā te tiro, mā te whakarongo, mā te mahitahi, mā te whakamaumori, mā te aroha, ka taia e mātou. By believing and trusting, by having faith and hope, by looking and searching, by listening and hearing, by sheer desire and determination, by all being done and compassion, we will succeed. For today's council meeting, I would like to acknowledge the Māori Queen. The Māori monarchy goes back to the 1850s when tribes all over the country discussed the ideas of appointing a king. They decided to appoint a tribal leader as the rapidly growing number of Europeans was putting pressure on Māori to sell land, and they were losing control of their own affairs. New Zealand's new Māori Queen has been named Ngā Waihono e Te Pō, the youngest child of the late monarch, so we certainly acknowledge you today. I'd also like to acknowledge the passing of Glenys MacDonald within our community, and I attended that service. Glenys was an articulate record keeper and very involved in Grey Power and St John's and the health shuttle. But the family shared with me, and I think it's important to know and acknowledge, and I've always said, you know, my one fear for this district would be the loss of our volunteers that hold not only our district, but our country together. Glenys spent 4,500 hours to the Dannevirke radio, 7,800 hours to the health shuttle, and over 14,000 hours were recorded over her 12 years of volunteering. And that was just from reading her notebooks. So I certainly acknowledge the work that she did, and also the young people within our community that she trained to take over. And it's great to see all those young people still involved in St John's. So it was a very, very big service. So certainly acknowledge what she has given to this district. Right, there are no apologies, although councillors, I will start with one and offer our heartfelt and sincerest apologies for the hurt, distress, hardship, trust and confidence that's been broken in our direct debit era. We will be working with the community to find pathways forward to ease the financial burden this has caused. We'll also make public any recommendations from the investigation to ensure transparency, necessary improvements, and slowly earn back the community's confidence and trust. Right, there's no items for public forum. Notification of items not on the agenda. For councillors, we do have a very large agenda today. I'll move to the confirmation of our minutes for the council meeting held on Wednesday, the 28th of August. All right. Any conflicts of interest today? Right. The confirmation of the minutes for the Wednesday, the 28th of August. Can I have someone move those as a true and correct record? Moved to Councillor Wallace, seconded Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Here goes page 5, page 6, page 7, 8, page 9, 13, 15, 17, 18, and 19. Thank you, councillors. And also, can I have a mover for the extraordinary meeting the Tararua District Council held on Wednesday, the 4th of September? Moved by Councillor Petty Weber, seconded by Councillor Chase. All those in favour, please say aye. Okay, carried. Page 21, page 22, and page 23. Take the community boards and community committee reports as one. Can I have a mover to receive those? Moved Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Gilmore. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Starting with positively Woodville on page 25, page 26, page 27. I trust Councillor Gilmore, you'll speak to the legalities of the Minister of Transport will need to adhere to with the consultation for tolling Te Ahuturanga. Page 28. Just noting the annual general meeting. Councillors, for anyone interested in going to that for positively Woodville. 9. Explore Pahia Toa, the minutes from Wednesday the 4th of September, page 30, page 1, page 33, page 34, Ekatahuna Community Board, page 39, 50, page 41, page 42, page 43, page 1. Community Board, page 45, 46, 48, 49, 50. Item 9.1, the request from funding from Positively Woodville Community Committee. Yeah, Ellie, did you wish to speak to that, or I'll just go through that statement? The Positively Woodville Community Committee have made application to two funds from the Tararua District Council, one from the Tararua General Purposes Woodville Gifted Land Special Reserve Fund, and the other from the Tararua District. Both funds are very suitable for this. This has been a project that and is very much a need from what I've seen in the community. Councillor Gilmore, would you like to speak to the paper?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd definitely like to speak to the paper. This has been a really long-standing dream and one that I'm confident will be achieved, which will make a real difference to the children of Woodville. Approving these requests won't have a rating impact, so the funds are sitting there available in an account for these exact types of things. Woodville kids don't have a lot, and the skate park has been at least 10 years in the making. This is an opportunity for us as a council to be a real enabler. The general purpose Woodville Gifted Land Fund is there specifically for the purpose, for the benefit of Woodville. I'm really pleased that a project's been identified that will use some of that, so not a majority, a part of that to fulfill its purpose. Granting the full amount will still leave a significant balance. Separately to that, in the second letter that Positively Woodville sent, the Community Recreation Fund is district-wide and has been really well utilised for similar projects. The amount requested is the same as the amounts that have been given for similar skate park projects. So I recommend that we give the full amount requested, 150,000 from the Woodville Fund and 50,000 from the Community Recreation Fund. And if I can beat Councillor Johns to it, I intend to move that, move the motion. Otherwise, I would be very, very happy to second it.
Second the motion.
Councillor Johns, are you financial member of the Woodville?
I'll second the motion.
Councillor Franklin. Is there any further discussion, please, before we move that? Councillor Wards.
Can I just seek some clarity? I mean, Councillor Scott here has commented that it will still leave plenty in the fund. I note under 3.6 that, Ellie, you've indicated the balance is 164,000. Just work with me, and they're requesting 150.
They're requesting $50,000 from the recreation, correct, which is in line, I think, with other applications for skate parks.
That's answered my concern, as I thought it might be completely empty. Thank you for that clarification.
And I did also check with the Tararua General Purposes Woodville gifted land, that it is the interest portion of that is available for distribution. But because we've never had a call for that, that full amount is also available without clearing it out. So I too was concerned in those areas.
I'm with you now. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Further questions around that? Okay. I do look forward to seeing the design and the consultation on that with the community, but I think where council has always played a really critical role for the communities in funding these, remembering all of our skate parks have been community led and funded. It does provide great seed funding for others to come on board in that. Councillor Wards.
The only other question I have is there any risk to us agreeing to this for that amount of money if they're unable to secure the additional support that they're going to for lotteries? I mean, they don't get it all. What happens? We don't draw it down?
And the exception to that, actually it wasn't, the exception to that would have been with another funder in Ekirahona, understanding the small community. Yeah. But no, and we would, more than comfortable with the transparency and the reporting that occurs in the Positively Woodville minutes to actually keep abreast of that project as well. Great question. So we have the motion has been moved by Councillor Gilmore and seconded by Councillor Franklin. There's no further questions. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. I'm sure you didn't say aye, Councillor Johns. Thank you, councillors, and I am very confident in the committee and the passion and desire to get that project complete. So it will be fantastic for the children. Thank you to them. Right, we move on now to item 9.2, which is the submission on tolling for Te Ahua Turanga the Manawatu Tararua Highway proposal. And I thank the infrastructure manager very much for putting some of the base of that proposal together, and I'm sure that we have other comments on that. Now, Hamish can't be with us today, but I do have some feedback, and I'm sure others do too, into the submission. So I'm just going to take, I think there will be information that comes to light. The submission probably will be on hold and sit with the Chief Executive and myself until the last minute, but I would like that public discussion on it as well. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Yeah, firstly, I just wanted to thank our Infrastructure General Manager for all of the work that he has done on this. It was at a bit of an early stage of the process with more and more information coming out, but I think he's done a really good job. I do have a few comments to potentially add into the submission. The first of that is I'd really like the opening to be slightly reworded to remove the wording in its current form and replace that with a statement that we are opposed to the proposal to toll the replacement road in any form at all. I would also really like for us to add in some references to the Land Transport Management Act 2003, particularly with reference to section 48(1), which lists a number of areas that the minister must be satisfied with before tolling goes ahead. One of those crucial pieces is community and regional support, which they have none. And I would like that to be really clear in our submission as well. There's another clause in there that talks about adequate consultation within the Land Transport Management Act. I think it could certainly be argued that the consultation for this has been lacking and inadequate, particularly with the refusal to release the tolling assessment, which I find incredibly disappointing and actually bordering on reprehensible. So I would like that to be added in there as well. And I would also like there to be references to NZTA's very own tolling policy, which there are multiple breaches within their own tolling policy. So when we're having a look, or when, sorry, the NZTA board's looking at that, I would like them to reflect on the fact that they are not keeping to their own policy. The other piece is, Mayor Tracy, and I think the recommendation already covers this, that this is quite fast moving with information sort of drip feeding through. There may be more that comes out before consultation closes. So I'm very, very comfortable that the Mayor and the Chief Executive have delegated authority to be able to add anything else pertinent. And so those are my comments. Thank you, Your Worship.
Comments?
Around the tolling assessment not being released, Tararua District Council has taken it upon itself and put traffic counters on both the Saddle Road and the Pahiatua track so that we can start gathering that information. When I was thinking about this, I've been advocating for people to share how the road impacts with them. So at our Civic Honour Award, we had some stats shared with us on just what it is when you have a health condition travelling over to Palmerston North, and I do have some of that to share within our submission as well. I also took the time, this is a replacement road. I know that it's been referred to as a new road, but I just wanted a gentle reminder of the reason it's a replacement road. Yes, it might be 12 to 14 minutes, which may be an improvement on the current detour routes, which are the Pahiatua track and the Saddle Road that we are currently using. But the Manawatu Gorge was 7 minutes and it was flat. I don't consider it an upgraded road. It is still steep. Transmission Gully's got a gradient of 8%. We'll still have 8% on our side and 10% gradient on the Ashes side. So, and without that tolling assessment, we're not able to consider whether there's any fuel or vehicle maintenance savings that actually exist. So I did just want to note that. I also wanted to I was thinking about our young people, and our young people, their connection over, to Palmerston North for sport, and I also have spoken to Sport Manawatu. We get those statistics through, the community wellbeing meeting on the Rural Travel Fund and how hard it is financially for families to be able to travel to do that sport. So they were certainly going to prepare a submission and include some of that there. But I also got to thinking about driver licensing, and I was really proud because this year, my youngest daughter got her full license. It was absolutely fantastic. It's an achievement for any child, but it's actually a great cost to parents to do that. My children learnt to drive at 100 kilometres an hour before they ever learnt to drive, to be on roundabouts or traffic lights, because when you're learning to drive, you've got to go to Palmerston North to find the traffic lights and, and some significant lane changing for all that practice. So it's incredibly expensive. There's a real concern, getting over the saddle and the pahia to attract for those young people. But actually to go and sit that license and get their photograph taken and all of that, it just continually adds barrier after barrier for our people. So I certainly wanted to add something in there, and I have prepared something around what it takes just to get a driver's license in the Tararua District. Councillor Sutherland, before I go through my list, you're very welcome.
Hello, Karen.
Oh, no.
Hello.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland.
I think when I'm due to go through this, you might come across, you might mention what I was thinking.
Also just talking around the figures that they've used, not adding up around the usage, and that goes back to some of that tolling policy as well. Also, talking to the Motorhome Association, who are currently surveying their members, and it's been a very hot topic for their members. But councillor, when we talk about heavies, we've got to think about the whole economy, and we've put a lot into tourism. We've put a lot into the Motorhome Association. We welcome them into our district. We've got all our towns are motorhome friendly, but 36,000 of those vehicles are classed as heavies. The 3.5 tonne is not very big, and so some of those smaller vehicles versus what our minds naturally go to, with the large trucks. So we're certainly working with them on that and those numbers. We won't have that until we've got some of our counts, but I have requested the maintenance costs currently for both the Pahiatua track and the Saddle Road. The Tararua District Council certainly cannot afford to take those back if the road is tolled. But the maintenance that will be on those roads for NZTA certainly dwarf what they're going to receive by way of a toll, and actually the social impacts that they'll cause to our district. So we won't have a lot of that until that data starts coming through, but I would like to add that into it, and certainly request where any social impact around the social harm that could be caused comes from. Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Tracy. You did answer part of my comment really. It was around the cost of maintaining the current Saddle Road and also the cost of management of a tolling system. And those two factors together are going to be significant. And I was just trying to estimate the returns on tolling too, and it's not significant if you actually do take the costs away. But one of the things I was, and I know that we've got a little bit of time left, and we have a meeting tonight too for this area, but one of the things the government and the minister seem to be focusing quite a bit at this point of time on the cost of the road, which is say 800 million now. These figures we haven't been aware of until recently, but the original figures were 620 or 650, but I liken it to Transmission Gully really, which probably doubled, from start to go, and they do have an alternate route, an alternate route, and that's a very similar situation where one might suggest that tolling should claw back the $500 million of overrun there. So not dissimilar, and none of our submissions to date have probably focused on that, and we may need a bit more information and maybe think a bit more about how we respond to that. So I haven't quite got the answer in my mind about that yet, but it is a matter It is a matter that I'm thinking about, just whether that's an issue for a submission or not.
I think it is a relevant point. It's certainly being asked and talked about in the community as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd actually like to add to the fragility of our rural roads, with the Balance Valley Road now out of action for good. I don't know how long it's going to be out of action. Hamish might know the answer to that. But we all know that when the Saddle Road was closed and the gorge was closed, that became the connector from Woodville to the Pahiatua track. And I think the timing of the closing of the Pahiatua track last week was godsend, I think. Not that I like it being closed, but to be the day after we had that big meeting was pretty incredible. But to lose that Balance Valley Road connector as well is really concerning.
And I think it demonstrated the fragility of those roads that we have been talking to the government about. The Saddle Road, before the Minoltu Gorge collapsed, had 150 cars on it. Right now it's got 5,500. That has taken a lot of maintenance. Those orange markers that you see really concern me. That road is slumping. That's why you can't put heavy vehicles on it. The cost to even do that up, it's just too great. Councillor Wards.
Thanks, Your Worship.
The opportunity. I think first and foremost, I certainly endorse the draft and what it's included. This is such a moving feast because of the speed at which the announcement was made and the small consultation period. I think that right up until the deadline on the 7th, I think we'll be coming up with other thoughts. We've been challenged to work through the process. We've also been challenged to think of possible solutions rather than, as we all stand here, we want it to be toll free. So I've prepared a submission from a historical perspective in my role as historically the CE of Tararua Health Group, and having led that organisation from the time when the gorge was ultimately closed through to this stage now. And I reflect on back in the day when the gorge was open, we used to attract a lot of rural health professionals to our team here in the Tararua. There was a wide range of A, GPs and B, nurses that used to travel through from the Manawatu using that gorge. We had excellent provision of specialist outpatient clinics because they quite enjoyed coming through to Dannevirke and Pahiatua for the day, and travel wasn't a problem. So as we observed, after the closure of that gorge, there was a steady decline in our ability to retain. I had at least 3 GPs that after 18 months said, I can't do this anymore, Sharon, I can't travel. And so I've reflected on, anecdotally, the impact that closure has had, but also had looked very positively towards the opening of that road to be able to address and turn around access in the wider sphere to health services. We know we struggle now, every other rural area in New Zealand struggles to retain, attract and keep equitable health services for our district. So I've advocated that we need to address this. I've also tried to consider possible opportunities that this may add, and I've tried to positively reflect on maybe we might get some public transport out of this. Maybe there might be some recognition in our fare rate, or I've tried to think aspirationally and positively about alternatives. Clearly, my stance is still toll free. But in my submission, and it couldn't be included in this one, I have reflected anecdotally on, as you've indicated, Your Worship, the social impact, but exclusively on the impact to equity and access to a huge range of health services. There was a very profound statement made by a gentleman from Woodville, you know, and he stood up and said, I have to travel that road 3 days a week to stay alive. And, you know, those are gems, and we need to build stories and advocate around that, and ensure that, yes, the 19,000 patients that access health services across our district have a right to this road. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for being able to share that powerful submission back to them and for that feedback into ours. The access that this challenges led me to wonder, you know, in the consultation document, it talks about the submissions being summarised to go to the minister, you know, and then to the chair of Waka Kotahi for their consideration. How do you summarise the impact to the Tararua district, to the people? You know, we've never seen, and I guess Bernard Hickey called it a revolt in the heartland. And I was talking to Mayor Alex Walker this morning, and I think that is some of the crux of this. You know, we have had impacts to our health system. It is challenging to get doctors, it's challenging to get staff. For our education, you know, many of our teachers come across from there. All the professional development is there. It impacts every part of our life. We've lost banking services, in budget cuts, we've lost social services. But the straw that broke the camel's back is you took away and you thought you'd charge for access to those basic services that we deserve. And it's impacted everyone. How you summarise that is going to be very, very difficult. And I look forward to, because I'm sure we will be going through those documents as well. But I wanted to thank you very much for, you know, I've thought about solutions, you know, and the government's been clear on that. What solutions are there? And I've thought, you know, with the technology, you can have license plate recognition, and that can, you know, if you live here in the Tararua, that could be free. But it's only part of the problem, because that access is to all the people that work and come over. It's to those cancer support nurses that come over. It impacts every part of our life. And whilst that might be one solution, I'm not sure it's the right solution. So I'm still trying to think of some of those solutions as well, but stay very strong that actually the benefit of that road for the economics of this region and for our health and well-being is to keep it free. So, I'll go Councillor Johnson, Councillor Franklin.
Your Worship, yeah, I totally concur with and endorse the comments made by everybody to this point. I will correct you on one point, though. The trip through the gorge back in the 60s was 6 minutes in a Ford Consul or a like one Zephyr, and I can probably provide evidence.
Would be fantastic, because it is a hard figure. So much time has passed, but I wouldn't want to spread the word that the mayor drives faster than you. The evidence would be great if you can provide that. Thank you so much. Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just add my rear wheel drive MX5 was much faster than that. I don't think I hit the brakes ever going through the gorge. Yeah, I've now forgotten what I was going to say. That's a bit of a worry, isn't it?
Are there any? Okay, Councillor.
The one health thing we haven't mentioned this morning is MedLab. And now we've got the threat, you know, from the THG that the costs of that is going through the roof, and those vehicles come over, well, they come to Pārtua twice a day. Yeah. I presume they come to Dannevirke as well twice a day. Sharon, would that be right? You think?
I'm not going to comment on.
Okay, no, that's right. No, I just wanted to know about MedLab, whether, you know, that's another service that we cannot afford to do without.
I think it's all those little parts that link together for the Tararua district that actually just increase the cost and make things more difficult. And it is that 1+1+1 effect, and that will be the damage. Councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, I think the more we're talking, this health thing is getting bigger and bigger, and it's quite concerning because we've got very little health services here, so there's a lot of travelling over the hill. So that's a really major one. And the other one is, forgive me for not knowing, emergency services vehicles. What's the story? They won't be charged?
Emergency services vehicles won't be charged, so that's your fire, your ambulance, and your police. And that's, that's one aspect, and I'm grateful for that for the ambulance. But that doesn't go. If I think about Glenys MacDonald and the number of hours, the health shuttle can make 2 or 3 trips just from Dannevirke. That's not counting the Ikirahona, that's not counting Pahiatua. So it adds cost to every layer of that. Noting that, in Woodville, when the siren goes up, it's normal, the fire service is normally to accidents on the saddle. So, yeah, but emergency vehicles are not charged, is my understanding. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I did just want to add one other piece to this for the submission, and it does go to some of the points that have been raised. I don't have the business case on me at the moment, but I've spent a good bit of time looking through the business case for the replacement road. And one bit right up the front really struck me, and that's NZTA's own estimates indicate that they predict a 50% reduction in accident costs with the new road. This road is not safe. It is not resilient, but it is actually going to hurt our people. If our people can't afford to drive over that road, on NZTA's own figures, they are going to be 50% more at risk of being hurt. And that is absolutely disgusting to even be thinking about it. So I just thought if we add that in, I can get the reference for our submission, but that is not our guess, that is NZTA's estimate.
And it was a large part of the business case in getting the approval for this road. And also for them taking over the Saddle Road maintenance, Pahiatua track, and the Balance Valley Road as well. Hope we can do that. I think it links, when we're talking about tolling a road, the administration costs of tolling a road and having, different people free and all of that outweighs the social harm that this road is doing. Yeah, I would very much, that tolling assessment is a critical piece of data that is not being released. And I just so you know, councillors, that was requested by me on the 3rd of September. Okay, so we've still got a fair amount of work to do. We do have the Dannevirke toll-free meeting tonight with the Dannevirke Community Board, and I understand the Ashes community is also having a meeting which I've been invited to. And I also feel for the people of Ashes, because as much as we're worried about the maintenance and the number of cars and the accidents, those same cars that we're worried about are driving through their streets too, and they certainly were promised that they would get their peace back. Sorry, Hamish, thank you very much for all your work that's gone in that. We will work closely with you till the end. I am very grateful for the support of the Horizons Regional Council. There are messages coming through just where other councils are sharing their submissions with us in draft at this stage, but that support is there region-wide. They understand the criticality of this connection.
Is there intent, Your Worship, to send this?
No, so we'll continue to work on this submission. It will be sent out to councillors in iterations on the way through. So I guess we're just seeking that we endorse the base of the submission and that the delegation to incorporate amendments and additions be left with myself and the Chief Executive to have prior sign off. But it is my intention to, as those changes are made, that we email that out to councillors so you're kept up to speed with that. Councillor Gilmore.
Move the recommendations.
I'm happy to second your worship.
Moved by councillor Gilmore, seconded by councillor Wards. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, councillors, and we look forward to this evening's meeting. Right. Now, item 9.3, we've got Rebecca Bell with us, so welcome, Rebecca. So item 9.3 is the draft rates postponement policy.
Welcome.
Nice to see you again. For the others in the room, my name is Rebecca Bell. I am working with council on. So this morning we're here to present to you the draft postponement policy for adoption for consultation. Everyone in this room is aware of the circumstances that have led to the decision to prepare this policy. And I think what I will do, I primarily take the report as read. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. We have been working with members of the public over the last few days, so this has it's become part of the ongoing council a conversation both inside council and out, so everybody's quite familiar with it. In terms of the draft policy itself, I'd just like to highlight to councillors some of the things that were important to you in the process of deciding to draft a postponement policy, and I'd direct your attention to 4.1 in the report. At the time that council was considering its options and decided to make to prepare a draft policy for consultation, council was concerned to minimise the impact on households of council's era as much as possible. It was concerned to ensure equity and fairness to all ratepayers. It was concerned to act with integrity and transparency, and also to remain within the legal framework in which it needs to operate. So in terms of the policy itself, I wonder, would you like to just give them a brief rundown?
Good morning, councillors. I assume that we've all read the policy. Our discussions around what that would include is that it would be a very targeted response to this era. So you can see at 3, the scope and criteria is to cover those who have been impacted by this issue. The objectives, I think, is also a critical part of this piece. So when we were developing this policy, we really looked at the objectives that we were trying to achieve, and that was to provide assistance to ratepayers impacted by our era, to provide a remedy so that those ratepayers impacted could enter into postponement agreements to be able to postpone those arrears, and that would reduce the immediate financial impact of this on them, and to provide council with a further tool. So the existing tools that we have under the Local Government Act and the Local Government Rating Act, they are there for us and they are there for the impacted ratepayers, but this is just another way that they can address any issues that they have with the era. And also, of course, that we would provide no interest or penalties on any of the amounts owing. I won't go into the background. I think that's quite well known now, but implementation, essentially anyone that is impacted by this era will be eligible to apply, and we've already started to speak to some of those impacted, and some have indicated that that is something that they'd like to look into, so that's heartening to see. Yeah, so essentially, yeah. What we're proposing at the moment and also would like to discuss with you your thoughts on this is the event that might trigger repayment under the postponement policy. So we've suggested a couple of events that might trigger it. So that's just around the transfer of the ownership of the household. So if the ratepayer ceased to be the owner or occupier of the home, or use it as their sole residence, or on the death or otherwise of the ratepayer. So it's really about postponing to an event that would change ownership of the home. We've also just put in here some of the roles of how we see this policy being implemented and administered. So I'd like some, if you have any comments on that, I'd receive those. And any questions, happy to take. Yeah.
Was, just depending on the questions, the rates proposed postponement policy is a critical policy that enables us to help those that we've impacted with our errors and processes with the rates, rebate and direct debits. After manually applying the rates rebate, the direct debit has failed to be adjusted for homeowners with the rates increase. The error has been present since 2018. It's impacted 602 of our most vulnerable homeowners. 321 of these ratepayers are now in arrears, and this policy provides them the relief they need to delay payment without penalty or interest for an agreed period, such as the sale of their property. It allows us an option to work with our people as we find a way through together. So I'm certainly... Or I call that I will.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I did note, however, as I was reading through that within the purpose it was designed, this policy does not provide for postponement of rates more generally, as one of the last statements in section 3. And given the title of what the policy is, if another issue comes up where this may be a possible tool in our toolkit to remediate another issue around rates, and using this option as a way to mitigate that. I guess where I'm coming from, have we got the wrong title for this? If we're so focused on addressing the particular issue that we are trying to address, because I thought some of our original discussion was around providing a policy that yes, it will allow us to be able to address this particular issue, but maybe a wider tool into the future. And so when I see rates postponement policy, but the whole focus is just on this, are we preventing, I mean, would it be the next policy that might come along in 10 years or 20 years or whatever have to be rates postponement policy B or something? Do you see where I'm coming from? I thought we were going to use a wider approach, part of which would allow us to assist the community with an option. And I'm just questioning or asking for clarification, why have we gone straight to just this with this title?
Your Worship, I think we had a discussion initially around this, and it was to be a targeted policy. It is prescribed by the legislation what it's called and how we, so that's why it's got that very generic name. We have proposed for review every year. So we'll do an internal review to see how it's being used. If we are going to make any amendments, we just use the consultation process. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That. Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, well, I think at the last meeting I attended, I was away for a couple of weeks, but I did bring up rates, postponement policies, and some councils did have very general ones, but I appreciate you've focused on this particular item, which is fine. Just a couple of in-house things, really. I think I mentioned it last time through to perhaps Tess and Rebecca. If we set a figure at the start, that figure, and take a charge on the property as well, the reducing figure will still apply. We can reduce it. They can pay the figure off and the charge will still apply. So, but the more important question, if we prepare a statutory charge at the start of this, and there may be a lot of them, are we going to just have them sit on the file and not register them? Number one. Number two, if we do register them, would we do it in the house and save some costs? So those are two questions really. Do we register them or sit them on the file? If we don't and we want to apply them to the title, do we do it in-house?
Your Worship. We're not, I don't think the intention is to register any charges at this stage. Rates are a charge on the property anyway, so we won't need to do that. While there's a postponement agreement in place, there's no requirement and the limitation doesn't apply until that event, 6 years from that event. So there's no requirement at this stage.
Councillor Wallace.
No, it was answered. Thank you.
Councillor Long.
Thank you, Mayor. See, just the one in credit, is there going to be a policy of plus interest?
We're getting some legal advice on that, specific legal advice, but that hasn't been received at this stage. I'll communicate as soon as it is.
Are there no further questions, Rebecca?
I just wanted to highlight as well other options to people who are arrears. Some people have chosen to pay off their arrears in full already, and that option is available. There's also the option to enter into a payment plan with council to pay off over time, and then this option of a postponement is an additional option, and then people can also take a combination of those options as well. So, so each resolution for each customer will be bespoke to them. I also just wanted to mention about the statement of proposal. So, in the process of consultation. So, what we are seeking from council today is the adoption of the draft. So if you proceed with adoption, it will remain draft and we will take it out to the community to consult. And that's a legal requirement. So we're talking a 3-week consultation period with hearings and deliberations prior to adoption, your normal process. In terms of the statement of proposal itself, obviously that sets out the background and the rationale for the proposal, which is the proposal is to adopt this policy, and the feedback questions that we will be asking the community are, do you think that this policy is an appropriate thing for council to be setting in place, and do they have any feedback on the specifics of the policy? One of the recommendations, or we should have added a recommendation to the agenda item, just to say that if there are any minor adjustments to the draft statement of proposal, that we recommend that you authorise the chief executive to make those minor adjustments.
So I'm just writing that down. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, can we talk to the draft now? The one in front of me?
Bit of proposal.
Yeah. Well, it says on page 2 of the draft, it says the two systems were not talking to each other. Well, a system can't talk. So I'm just thinking of the rhetoric, because I'm thinking of some of the feedback that's coming in across the spectrum of the media, and some of it's quite, and I think that phrasing, I know what you're saying, but I think that phrasing, only you and I can talk. And I think what we're talking here is, yeah, that just looks to me as the wrong wording.
I need to modify that if that's something that, I mean, the intention is to try and be as plain English as possible, but if that's problematic, we're happy to modify if you feel that it's appropriate.
I'm happy to share some words around that, but one's a manual process, so we can look at altering that, Councillor Wallace. Happy to send that out as well. We'll put that into a minor adjustment. Any further questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. Working and helping the staff out the last couple of days, these people are on fixed incomes, and this policy is the only option really for a lot of these people. So yeah, I just wanted to comment that I really support this, and most of the people I've spoken to the last couple of days, this is their only option. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Johns, are you happy to move the recommendation 1.1, 1.2, and then adding 1.3 that any minor adjustments the Chief Executive be authorised to make? And seconded by Councillor Tete Weber. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, councillors. Right, it is 4 minutes to 10. Councillors, I might adjourn our meeting and reconvene at 10:15.
33% reduction in safety under their total assessment. I think one of the few things that
Welcome back, councillors. Now we move on to item 9.4, the Dannevirke Compounded Supply Options Assessment. So welcome Roger and Hamish.
Your Worship the Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take the report as read. However, I'm just going to provide a brief summary. I'd just like to highlight just a couple of points prior to taking any questions. Firstly, the reports. I don't know how many of you read through the reports or at least skimmed the reports, but as you would have seen, there's a couple of hundred pages of reports that we've come through. Essentially, in summary, Tonkin and Taylor have advised us that the floor of the impounded supply has deteriorated significantly, as have the subsoil drains. So essentially, the liner needs to come up and that all needs to be replaced. The question that still remains is the eastern embankment. And I don't believe we're going to get a definitive answer on that until we actually take the liner up and we see what's underneath. At this stage, there's no indications that it has been undermined or it has deteriorated, but we just don't know. And Dan Watch, the peer reviewer in particular, noted some of the pictures from the work that was done when it was that trench was refilled, and they expressed some concerns on the basis of the visual images that they saw. So I did just to provide that context. The remainder of the work that Tonkin and Taylor has highlighted is indicated as not urgent, so it can wait and could be completed as part of ongoing maintenance work on the impounded supply in the future. So in summary, the recommendation to council, and I'd just like to stress this, is from a source perspective is to complete the investigations into the bore work that has been done on Laws Road, or at least to close that out. I think there's still a number of questions there, and I think the recommendation is that is closed out. If it is proven to be unsuccessful, then we need to find another alternate source or secondary source, and I believe that work needs to continue. Excuse me. In terms of raw water, we'll continue to manage the impounded supply as we've been doing and monitoring it. In terms of treatment, that an upgrade is required to the treatment plant so that we can deal with that higher turbidity water during the heavy rainfall events. Treated water storage and additional storage facility constructed. That will also enable us to do the remediation works on the existing tank at the top of Blue Gum Lane. Demand next month at the ICCM, Council will be presented with a demand management and water conservation plan, which is comprehensive, and that essentially answers the questions there and has a program of works to deal with demand. And then finally, the land acquisition process needs to be completed, in that the new legislation now is now in play since May, and that makes the farmer co-responsible for the impounded supply at this point. So we do need to progress that and complete it. Once the scheme itself has been made resilient, then options in terms of what to do with the impounded supply can be considered. And I believe that's the key time that or that's the opportunity to take the situation to the public and give them an opportunity, give them the chance to comment on how they believe council should proceed with the impounded supply itself. Financially, where this report is not asking for any additional money, there is money set aside in the LTP in year 1 and year 2, and the intent is that that money would be utilised to affect what I've just spoken about in terms of next steps. And there has been there was no significant deterioration noted in the floor of the impounded supply when the ROV, so the ROV or the underwater vehicle was in just over 2 weeks ago. We have had a review from Tonkin and Taylor. Their comment is that obviously the dam could deteriorate rapidly, but there's nothing that definitively indicates that at this point. We'll put the next stage is to get the divers in there to remark the depressions so that we can continue to monitor those ourselves with our own underwater vehicle to ensure that if there is a significant deterioration, that can be recorded. The final thing I'd like to say before questions is I can appreciate there's probably some frustration amongst councillors, well, I'm sure there is, in relation to the fact that, approval was given last year for us to commence pre-treatment and to install some additional treated water storage. And if I'm responsible for the fact that that has not occurred, so I want to put my hand up for that. However, given that we didn't have all the information in relation to the status of the impounded supply, essentially I felt it was important that we delayed those decisions until we were confident that we knew where we were going. At that point, the total cost, and we're still unclear, was not clear. So for me, there were too many unanswered questions to be committing significant amounts of money, $5 million. Between $5 and $6 million with all that uncertainty. So if you, so I accept responsibility for that. But what I am very pleased about is that all the work that has been done essentially verifies that decision or that recommendation that was given to council in October. So I think that was a sound decision that's been proven now. The only slight change to that is a permanent additional treatment, not a relocatable treatment plant. And given that the plant that we were looking at purchasing had never been constructed before, so it was the first one, personally, I'm quite pleased that we didn't proceed with that at that time, and now we can go out to market and get some design for a permanent treatment plant. That includes my comments. Are there any questions?
Through your workshop, I'd just like to add that at the time of making that decision in October, there was still a lot more unknowns in terms of the impounded supply. So that was still on the radar as a possible completing the design and potentially the fix of that. So what we've actually gathered during this sort of past 12 months is a lot more information around that status of the impounded supply. So just want to endorse what Roger has said, and even though he's putting up his hand for that, it has been a collective sort of decision making process regarding the postponement of that, and we've also had Rationale come in and review those decisions, and in fact they've come up with exactly the same decision. Just endorses that this council did make the right decision at the time, albeit not with the amount of information that we have now. So well done, Roger. I think it was absolutely the right path that we took.
Councillor Long, and then I'll go Councillor Johns and Councillor Chase.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. First of all, I have to say that I have not read the 4 reports from Tonkin and Taylor, Dam Watch, Rationale, or New Plymouth. I haven't read those, didn't have time. So I have not read them, so I don't have the full story in front of me. But Tonkin and Taylor saying it could deteriorate at any time, but it also could stay the same for the next 10 years. So we've got a decision to make here. So it's going to be a very difficult one. So thank you for your report, Roger. So without reading those reports, Rationale and Watch, what is their summary?
If I'd start with Dam Watch first. So essentially what Dam Watch, what we asked Dam Watch to do was to verify that Tonkin and Taylor had answered the questions that we had presented to them. And that is what Dam Watch has done, that they have, their report indicates that Tonkin and Taylor have answered the questions that we put before them, and they were the 4 questions relating to the key components of the impounded supply. They made a number of recommendations as part of that, which has been incorporated into Tonkin and Taylor's final report. So that's the Dam Watch side of things. Rationale looked at a whole lot of different options. So they really stepped right back and looked at the Danneberg water supply as a scheme in total, and identified a number of options that we could investigate. For example, looking at the Manawatu River as an alternate or the primary source. And so that's the approach they took. However, I think it comes down to the fact that in order for us to do anything with the impounded supply, we have to have additional pre-treatment and we have to have additional storage. So that's the sort of the bottom line. Rationale's report confirmed that, though they probably put a greater focus around the alternate or secondary source and the importance of that.
Can I supplementary to that? So you've just explained the eastern embankment. So we spent a year waiting for reports on the embankment, and now we'll probably never know, coming from you now, till the liner is taken off.
Yeah, that's my assessment of the situation. Until that liner comes off, we're not going to definitively know what the condition of that embankment is. But I will stress that at this point, there's been no indicators that it has been undermined or that it has deteriorated.
Thanks, Roger. In fact, the question in my mind prior to your mea culpa was, I thought we'd made a decision based on the information we had a year ago. There was so much doubt, but we had to ensure things were put in place regardless of what eventually proved to be the case. One was pre-treatment plant that could be sold possibly later on. The second was additional treated storage in Blue Gum Lane, another tank or whatever. And I just wonder why we backed off from that, because regardless of what happens to the dam, they were good decisions, I believe. We had already had experience with bores coming up dry. My gut feeling was they're probably going to continue to come up dry. Well, also those bores are in the take area that we're consented for. I'm disappointed that we haven't proceeded with a treated additional treated water tank or storage, and the pre-treatment. Months later, we're back where we were a year ago right now.
Through your worship, I think the key thing there is that as we've been monitoring the actual impounded supply, it's been functioning. The current supply that we've been providing to the Dannevirke community was the same as before the leaks were detected. So there's a fully functional dam. So we've analysed that risk, and we felt that there was enough time to delay engagement of any contractors to do that work while we understood the issue a lot more than what we did at that point in time. So I think it was a 12 months of doing further due diligence on that, and I think that now endorses stuff that we didn't know at the time that we do now know, and I think that was slowing it down has ensured that we know more and that we are making a decision. The last thing that we would have wanted is put all that in place, and then it wasn't the right decisions either. So I think the 12 months have been beneficial for us to understand the whole system more than what we did 12 months ago. And we base that a lot on the risk of what we're seeing currently with the dam that is functioning as it was designed.
Could I say one further comment? Just in response to your question, Peter. So we did employ someone. We had a consultant come in to project manage the installation of the treated water storage. Unfortunately, this person got very sick and was not able to continue with that. And so she wasn't replaced. However, we have already commenced work in terms of verifying the location and the size of that treatment plant, and we're looking at, or that treated storage, and we're looking at doing that in conjunction with the 2 reservoirs at Woodville. So it hasn't stopped completely, I suppose, is the point I'm saying, and we're now looking at it more holistically in terms of how might we deliver these reservoirs for the district. So there is still work, or there is work underway to get that going.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate that. I guess in the interim too, the whole Three Waters, I'll keep calling it Three Waters issue, has been up front in our minds, and we've not known whether we're going into a CCO and how will that would, and who would pay, and so there was probably a consideration that we're probably better off holding off anyway, I suppose. However, yeah, we're back where we were a year ago.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. Councillor Chase.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor Tracy. Can I just ask, in the 12 months of us doing our due diligence for this Three Waters for the council, how much has this cost us?
I'm just going to refer to the report. So the actual spend to date is 2.7 million at this point. I'm looking to see if it's correct.
I think last 12 months, we don't have those exact figures for the last 12 months in front of us at this point.
The biggest cost in the last 12 months would have been the work on the detailed design that commenced last year. So we were pushing really hard to get that completed. You may recall, so that we could commence the remediation work in the summer, last summer. And we spent a lot of time and effort to get to that point. So that was the bulk of the cost during that period.
Up on that, so those designs, are they still going to be relevant for us to use for the next step that we're looking at doing?
Not in the, well, yes, they'll still be relevant, but they won't become relevant until we actually, the council makes a decision as to whether they, to proceed with the repairs or not. So at that point, that's when all that work would definitely be invaluable. Yeah. And we'll be able to draw on the investment that's already been made.
Thank you, councillor Chase. Councillor Wards.
Thank you, Worship. Perhaps I just need a little bit of clarity on point number 6, Roger. That paragraph there about iwi and stakeholder engagement. I've underlined the sentence that a meeting with Horizons is yet to be scheduled to discuss resource consent. I'm a little concerned if one of the recommendations that's being made here is to get on and close out any, if it's not Laws Road, wherever we're going to be digging, we need to find an alternative source. Have any of those discussions been had with Horizons regarding if we start digging around elsewhere, are we going to get resource consent for that? Because potentially they can shut that whole option down, can they? Am I being a over here? But
Well, I suppose yes, they could if they chose to. So they've been kept informed and engaged all the way through the work that we've done to date. But in terms of a detailed conversation about where we're going from here, no, that conversation hasn't occurred yet. So we've been working with Horizons on a number of other issues, to be honest, over the last sort of 6 months. And we actually met with them again yesterday and talked about the impounded supply, but we haven't gone into the details. So I think really we need to get this across the line, I suppose, and then from that point, there needs to be really some detailed conversation. Yeah.
but just supplementary to that, and I don't know whether that's Brian or Steve, where's this on our risk register then?
Sorry, just through your worship, just to clarify a bit further. So any bores would be still operating under our current consent. So the total that we can take is the 120. Anyway, we wouldn't be able to do more than that, which is taking maybe 50 from there or 70 from there. So and these conversations I've certainly had with Michael and others as well. So I understand that, but if we wanted to take more than our allocation, then that would probably be an issue.
Thanks for clarifying.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. But also in that year period, there was investigation going on for the water take or water usage from the town and surrounding areas. And there was meters were going to be put in to see where the water was going and if we could reduce that usage. That was one. And also there was an investigation into Alliance also to see if they could find an alternative source. So if you were doing, and that was 25%. So if it was successful there, then our demand would reduce by 25 or 30%. And so therefore putting less pressure on the impounded supply. Is that correct?
My understanding, Councillor Long, is those investigations were not successful in finding that source. For the Alliance. Sorry.
And just on that meter issue, the meters were installed, and Marcus is going to prepare a report for council. So that came up at the ICCM last week. Yeah. So that did occur, but there's a number of things underway at the moment, and you'll get greater visibility of that through the demand management and water conservation plan that's about to be presented. So quite a comprehensive approach, not just for Dannevirke, for the whole district in terms of demand management and water conservation.
Thanks, Roger. That report will become critical to the regional council. My understanding is that the Manawatu River is over allocated. That is quite a significant change that water source. And I do have some reservations around timing. That's a very, very long project. Councillor Sutherland, I'll go to your question.
Thanks, me, Tracy. Just, I think, I was just taking note of Peter's comments. It's certainly been, there's been a lot of balls in the air with this particular issue, isn't it? And my view is that we might have lost some time, but I don't think we're at any worse position. I suppose you could say if the dam failed, our risks position would be worse. But from my perspective, I think the delay has been worthwhile, because we've got to think, we've got to look 30 to 50 years here now, and lots and lots of money. And so I think we have to get it right. And I think the delay in jumping into that was okay. But just, I don't want to be just more specific to Roger, me, Tracy, at this point in time, a new pre-treatment plant, at one stage we looked at buying something relocatable clip-on, with some comment about upgrading the current one. Is that still being looked at, considered, or is there some work? And the only reason I'm making this comment really actually is that at a recent infrastructure meeting, Mayor Tracy and myself spoke with Crown. Just at a recent infrastructure conference, Mayor Tracy and I spoke with the General Manager of Crown Infrastructure about this issue, and it was really interesting. He had quite a lot of information, and we were talking about relocatable, bespoke pre-treatment plants. He was quite knowledgeable. I was impressed, and we haven't got back to him. But there's been a lot of work and a lot of science and a lot of changes in that area, and this is not just a Dannevirke Tararua issue. This is quite countrywide. But I'll just leave it at that for the moment. But there is quite a bit of focus on this. Thank you.
So we certainly done the investigation around the pre-treatment plant, and worked with a consultant and contractor to figure out what that sort of cost was going to be, and the number itself, the dollar figure, gave us a bit of caution to hold fire, and because the difference in actually modifying the existing plant is huge. So if we can make a change that's permanent, which we're sort of talking about in this case, it'll save the council a huge amount of money compared to a relocatable one that was only really going to be there for us to fix the dam. So because we haven't made the decision to fix the dam, we're better off to take the other approach, build some resilience into that system for a lot less money. So that's sort of the approach we're thinking at this stage.
Roger, normally I'm the opposite. You know, you've got a lot of water and winter's coming, but summer is coming. What is the plan?
From what perspective, Your Worship?
From a water conservation period, if we had a dry summer, what is the plan to have some measures in place to ensure that people have the water to operate businesses and households effectively? Are you confident in the way the dam is being run at the moment that we could meet that?
Yes, I am. As I understand it, I wasn't here in Tararua in 2020, but there was a severe drought. Now, if we face those conditions again this summer, there's definitely going to be some challenges. But Marcus is just in the process of finalising a leak detection program, which we're doing across the whole district in the lead up to summer. It's more expensive than has been done before. It's looking specifically at the rural areas where that water is being, more rural areas where that water is being consumed. And we're confident that's going to help us in terms of just managing that demand.
Thanks, Roger. That's really good to hear, because I think that plays a really critical part in demand management, certainly if you're talking with the regional council around consenting and water use. Good.
Sorry, can I just add, we spoke at length about the demand management with Horizons yesterday. So this is part of our consent requirement for Ekatahuna and Dannevirke, but we've looked at the whole district. It's due next week to Horizons. We'll have it to them next week. But we just wanted to set the scene with them so they're aware of exactly, the thinking at Tararua and how we want to approach water management essentially. So I'd say it's fair to say the feedback yesterday was very positive from Horizons. The other thing that I'd stress is the approach that was taken around the whole water management over that summer period. Last summer appeared to work very successfully. We didn't have any water restrictions in Dannevirke, and it'll just be that close and regular monitoring of how we're going. You know, we're monitoring our rivers, we're monitoring our reservoirs, and we're monitoring demand. We're able to do that effectively and efficiently, and that will definitely helped in terms of us managing the situation last summer. So I'd recommend that again this summer.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Roger. Just a quick question. Is there any data showing now how much water we can't account for across the district? Like I sent you all that information the other day, and we knew that that point in time we were losing water, but we didn't know where. Is that still being looked into? Where's that at?
Yeah, that's part of the leak detection and part of the demand management program. We still know, especially here in Dannevirke, that we're drawing a lot more water than we should need for a population of this size. So we're definitely losing some water somewhere. It's just clarifying exactly where that is. Now, there has already been done a lot of leak detection done, so it's not like nothing's been done. Yeah, Marcus has identified there's more opportunity, and he thinks we might be able to isolate the particular areas where the bulk of that water might be going, so we can be more deliberate in addressing it.
Roger or Hamish, do you have a timeline that you're working to? This is a high public interest, and I have committed to keeping members of the public up to date. Have you got any timeline there that we might be able in that position to either have a meeting or some sort of an update so that people have that confidence in where the project's heading?
I think the key part of this is that we get those safety nets in place before we rip the cover off and have a look. So it will probably take 9 months to 12 months to get those two parts in play and have the engineering going and have a look at it. So there'll be sort of those three components to get the treatment plant upgraded so that we can deal with the high turbidity, the reservoir, and then do the engineering work once we've ripped the liner off, and then we can actually bring something back to council and the community to make a decision on. The stage we can't make that call, but it will take some time.
I would like some communication with the public so that they are aware and exactly where we're at, what the plan, where you're at with the project, and any information that might be helpful, just especially given, that summer is on its way, to give that reassurance. Be good.
Absolutely, and this will become one of the PMO projects as we go forward. So it'll certainly be reported through the ICCM each time. We'll have an update through that.
Be aware, as with Three Waters, then you will reach a point, from July you can't get a decision. Be on in a holding period, to keep that in mind. Councillor Johns.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just going back to those meters on I think we put a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago now, we put meters in on about 3 or 4 key branches of the main lines, the main water lines. We get that information as to where the water was going and who was using it. Well, then from there, determine leaks or usage, whether it's rural or otherwise. Have we not got that data?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so those meters were installed, and Marcus has gathered data, so he's preparing a report now for council. Yeah, just to give you an update as to exactly where things are at.
Other questions? Okay, the recommendations on page 93. Can I have someone move that we receive the report and endorse the proposed approach? Moved Councillor Pete-Weber, seconded Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Thanks, Roger, for all your work in there. I know that it is an incredibly complex project to be managing that, as well as the waters over the towns with so much going on. So we certainly do appreciate that and understand the challenge over the country right now in finding the people with those expertise to assist with that. So thank you very, very much for all your work in that space. It is truly appreciated.
For you, Mayor Tracy, I vote for 1.1. I will not be voting for 1.2 because I haven't read the report of 4, and also I still haven't made a decision on that yet.
Right, we will record your vote against one. Thank you. 1.2. I'll ensure that I look over the way. Okay. Right. A very big agenda. Thank you, councillors. Right, we're moving on to item 9.5, which is the adoption of bylaws, keeping of animals, alcohol bylaws, form of bylaw, and public places bylaw. Welcome, Jim. One nine.
Thank you. Oh, 121 on there is right. All right. Yes, we'll keep it up with you.
Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Through your worship, this report actually is written by the Manager of Democracy Services, Ellie, is just bringing forward for the formal adoption of the bylaws after deliberations. We have made the changes that were requested in the deliberations. So the report can be taken as read. And yeah, hopefully that's really question. We've got Joel being in as well. He's full of COVID and is unable to make it today. So here to excellent advice on the bill wide and also with the next item on files in the draft consultation.
Thank you. I will take these separately, Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Yeah, that was going to be my request, that we vote on we split out recommendation 1.2. So I'll just make a really brief comment on that. So I had strong concerns regarding the requirement for a permit. This is speaking on the keeping of animals bylaw, the requirement of a permit or approval for council, and agree with many of the submitters that it was an overreach. So I won't be able to vote for that particular bylaw. I spoke at length about this during the deliberations, so I will let those comments stand.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. For the benefit, I guess, for those viewing and for public debate, Jim, can I get Joelle to comment on the risk if that permit or the challenges that without having that permit make to your team or to the Tararua District Council in taking action?
Sorry, Worship, just to clarify, is that the risk if we didn't issue a permit for specific animals that are banned under the bylaw? I might be able to answer that. Just through your worship. We don't have a permitting system. We're pretty much going to be acting like an ambulance at the bottom of this cliff, because what will happen is we'll get complaints and then we'll have to go out and try and rectify that complaint and mitigate the nuisance. So it's a lot easier to put some rules where we can actually go and inspect the property first. If somebody wants to have a ram for eggs to serve their sheep, well, that's all well and good. We'll just check the fencing, make sure that's okay. And then we don't get a repeat of what we had just a couple of weeks ago with rams chasing kids down the street. So
Thank you. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I suppose I won't let the comments sit where they were in deliberations. I'll repeat some of my concerns. I certainly appreciate how that may be easier for staff to have a permitting system in place prior. I think that there's a few concerns with that, though. I do have a concern with the need for council staff to walk around and check people's fencing, when my preference would be that we make it really clear in our bylaw what the requirements are beforehand. One thing to note here was there has been a lot of discussion that bylaws are really used for a tool if we have complaints. So, you know, after the fact, that is a little bit different to asking each person who will be absolutely complying. They'll be, and the particular properties I'm concerned about are the ones that are rural adjacent, having to have someone walk over, check their fencing beforehand, potentially making them pay a fee when they have been doing it potentially for some time without any issues. Having the tool written, and I have no problem at all having conditions written into the bylaw with how people need to conduct keeping of animals on their land. But my personal feeling, even if it is easier for officers, is an overreach. And I actually do have some, and I mentioned this in deliberations, I do have some pretty serious concerns with the unintended consequences of the amount of administration that might be needed by council staff travelling from Dannevirke, heading to Eketahuna, heading to Pahiatua, heading to Woodville, heading out to some of our, you know, our other locations just to check someone's fencing. So appreciate that that might be a view that differs around the table, but I certainly still hold those concerns, so I won't be voting for that bylaw.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. Brian.
Sorry, through your worship, I just want to sort of clarify one aspect of this where it's the intention isn't to make staff's life easier in terms of how they approach this. It's actually to making it easier to rectify the complaint for the member of the public. So it's actually for the member of the public's benefit in terms of a quick or a way of dealing with the issues, because the alternate seems to take a lot longer and their complaint remains for a longer period of time. So I just wanted to make that distinction between it. We're not necessarily applying this so staff have things easier. It's actually the complainant.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Long.
That's incredible timing, because I was about to say that we're making Jim's life easy, work life easier, but our constituents, their life harder and more expensive. I will not be voting for the bylaw. I think it's encroaching on private property and rights. I take full note from CEO just then, that comment. And the other thing is that one of those votes was 60 of our constituents voted one way and 30 the other, and we supported the 30. And so I felt we failed our ratepayers or citizens of Tararua. And also we're expecting the government to listen to us on toll-free Tararua, but we're failing our own citizens. So I'm disappointed in this bylaw.
Very different issues. Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Johns.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the submissions, I would say 80% of those that submitted were mistaken in thinking that their premises or their properties were residential, where in fact they were rural. And when it was explained to them, they were all quite happy and went away. So the percentage of submissions against and for were pretty much irrelevant, really. The issue, as Councillor Gilmore has mentioned, is the rural adjacent properties where there's a fence between residential and rural. Now, what we can do to ensure that those such fences are adequate is moot, I suppose. But aside from that, I don't think there's an issue. And as far as the bylaw as written or as proposed is concerned, the keeping of rams and billy goats and so on, bulls in residential, I accept that as being, yep, that's fair enough. It's just those adjacent properties. I'm happy enough with it.
Through your worship, I just thought I'd just reiterate the fact that those properties that are bordering or being captured by the urban growth do have an existing use right under section 10 of the RMA, which means they will not be required to be permitted anyway. And also when I said we'd go out and inspect fencing, I used fencing as an example, but it may not just be fencing that's the issue. It could be smell, I've had a couple of those, and it can also be noise. So a variety of things that come up every day that we have to deal with, and we need the tools to deal with them, or we'll get complaints, which inevitably end up at the ombudsman as to why we're not doing anything.
Thank you for that. Councillor Long.
For you, Mayor Tracy, a perfect example is the mushroom farm in Havelock North. At one stage there, it was operating for X amount of years, 50 years on its own. But when urban sprawl got near it, it was closed down. So existing use doesn't always occur.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Tracy. You know, I think that we need some tools in the toolbox to, because most people, the laws are in place. People are forgetting one thing: laws are in place for one reason, and most people don't break them. I mean, I don't have policemen knocking on my door or inspectors and so forth because and I would think everyone around these tables here are law-abiding citizens. But I think our position is to go with the knowledge of the people that we, through our CE, employ, to take their lead because they are at the coalface. I would hate to have been that child being attacked by that ram the other day. And that's not a figment of my imagination, that's a fact. So I think that's where we have to look at these things. Law-abiding people don't worry about bylaws because they're all within the law.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. This will be my last contribution to this, but I actually think Councillor Wallace articulated my point perfectly, that we need to have rules and bylaws in place, and law-abiding people that follow those rules don't need to have inspectors coming around to bother them. That is my sole issue with this bylaw, that people that are doing the right thing, this bylaw will impose on them inspectors and other people to come around. I have no problem with the bylaw. I have no problem with any of that at all, and with giving tools to the toolbox. I appreciate and I take on board that it lessens the tools if there isn't a permitting system. But I thank Councillor Wallace because I think he's articulated my point.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. Right, I will take these bylaws individually. So the recommendation that we received the report from the Job Democracy Services Manager 1.1, and then individually the Keeping of Animals Bylaw 2024. Do I have a mover that bylaw is adopted? Moved by Councillor Wallace, seconder for that bylaw. Councillor Johns, all those in favour, please say aye. Against recorded is Councillor Long. We are on the Keeping of Animals Bylaw 1.1. Sorry, I moved 1.1 and then and for the bulk, and then 1.2 I'll do individually. So the Keeping of Animals Bylaw, those that are against.
clarification. 1.1 is just receiving the report.
Correct.
Happy to receive the report.
I did that part and then, so so we've removed 1.1, then the keeping of animals bylaw be adopted, which was moved by councillor Wallace and seconded by councillor Johns with 1.1. I'll do it separately. Right, councillor Wallace and councillor Johns, are you happy to move 1.1, the recommendation that the report is received?
Great.
Thank you. Right, can I have a mover, please, to adopt the Keeping of Animals Bylaw 2024? Councillor Wallace, seconded councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye, and I will call division.
Aye.
Councillor Long and councillor Gilmore are recorded against. Thank you, councillors. I move the alcohol bylaw 2024 be adopted. Can I have a move of that? Councillor Chase, seconded councillor Peter Weber. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Can I have a mover for the cemeteries bylaw to be adopted 2024. Moved by councillor Peter Weber, seconded by councillor Sutherland. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Public Places Bylaw 2024 be adopted. Can I have somebody move that, please? Councillor Gilmore, seconded councillor Long. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And noting that for all of those bylaws, the effective date is the 30th of September 2024. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Joelle, for your assistance with that. I'm terribly sorry you're not well.
Sorry, through your worship, would it be possible to jump the agenda? Next point of the guidance we released, Joelle. Page 1.3.
Right, okay, we will skip to item 9.7. The draft bylaws review and consultation for trade waste bylaw 2024, waste management and minimisation bylaw 2024, and traffic and road use bylaw. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, again, this actual paper was written by the Policy and Planning Advisor. It's seeking permission to adopt the drafts for trade waste bylaw, waste management and minimisation use bylaw for consultation. Yes, I'll do my best to cover that off.
Thanks, James. Does anyone have any questions? I do have one. Councillor Wards.
Before we launch into any detail or requiring subject experts, can I just ask the wider question of these bylaws already exist? Or not?
Starting afresh. So any
tweaks or changes or anything we're consulting on? Because in hindsight, I never thought the community would get so excited about consultation on bylaws that generally were pretty much been in place since. So, yeah. So I'm just questioning, this isn't brand new, any of these ones that you're about to introduce, are they?
Through your worship, trade waste is basically a rollover. Solid waste bylaw is now proposed to be called the waste minimisation and management bylaw, and there may be some slight tweaks to that. That's all outlined in the statement of proposal, which is attached to the report. traffic and road use may have a few slight changes to bring it into, make it a little bit more modern. There is a part in the traffic and road use bylaw relating to stock control, which we haven't touched. This is exactly the same as what is already in there for the last 6 years. And we've intentionally left that there so that we can have some coverage for enforcement purposes, although it be limited due to the problems with that bylaw, hence the review, until we make a new purpose-built stock control bylaw early next year.
Use what we've got.
Exactly. So that's why it's left in the schedule, and we can simply remove it out of the schedule while not having to review the entire bylaw again.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor Wards. I do have some very clear expectations on communication, how we go forward with this and those bylaws, so that people do have that understanding, the why and the what has changed articulated well. So look forward to that. Jim.
Sorry, I should have mentioned in the trade waste bylaw, I believe there is a review about how the charges will be affected. But the capability to be able to do that is already built into the bylaw and is in the existing bylaw. So that'll be a separate matter for the departments, and that'll maybe be in the paper that'll come at a future date.
Thanks for that clarification. Councillor Johns.
You move the recommendations 1.1 to 1.6, Your Worship.
When does that?
Sorry, does that reads the traffic and road use bylaw? Does that include that? Can I just make a comment or ask a question of Jim, please? When I read this last night and I read the new restrictions on parking, vehicles must not be parked on footpaths, grass verges where it will come and damage grass, blah, blah, blah. Then I noted that in the, first of all, I'd like to know how we're going to police that. But secondly, because we do have a real situation with that issue in Pahiatua, and in the bylaw itself at 7.22 to 7.32, that one is actually not mentioned. All the rest are.
Just seeing on front, so
Yeah, so under the mentions the traffic bylaw further in the the key changes to the draft bylaws. That I think that has been missed.
Yeah.
151 online. Traffic and road use bylaw 7.22 to 7.32. Where it talks about parking meters, etc. Yeah, there's no reference to the vehicles parking on grass verges, etc. in that list.
Through your worship, it probably is not necessary to actually define every offence in the bylaw, because it's already against, an offence against the Land Transport Act. So under the road user rule, it defines all the different offences for parking. So we have repeated that just for common things that occur in the district. As far as policing those things go, we receive complaints regularly, so we can go out there and we can actually, we will be issuing infringements for those stationary vehicle offences. We're just having to fix up a slight problem with the infringements, the electronic parts and IT issue, but we will be doing that because it's quite hard to get out of your driveway when someone's blocking it, and the police don't appear to attend those sort of things anymore. So if it's not for the council, where would you be?
Thank you for that, Jim. Yeah, the reason that I make reference to this in particular, because the issue that we have in Main Street in Pahiatua with one particular business that parks its big quad bikes, partly on the gardens and partly on the footpath. I've been told in the past that we didn't have a biking bylaw that would prevent that, and so nothing's ever been done about it. So that was a challenge.
Through your worship, we have spoken to that business owner. We don't have a specific parking bylaw as such, because we don't have time restricted parking here, or meters and things like that. And if we did do that, we'd have to create a schedule to the parking, because we have to have the actual measurements out of where braking lines are and all that sort of thing. So the parking enforcement we do is limited, and it's more complaint based. But the those sort of provisions in the traffic bylaw here today give us the ability to be able to actually enforce that.
Cool. Can I make a complaint now, please? Because it is still happening.
Councillor
Jim, in Woodville, virtually every street in the town has grass verge. The road itself is probably 3 metres wide. You really have to worry about cars coming towards you. Are you suggesting that cars park on the road, not on the grass verge, thereby blocking the road?
No, through you, Your Worship, again, we can't over trump what the legislation says. So the legislation says that you may park on a grass verge unless you're causing damage to a grass plot. So if we see that there's a big mud pool there now that people have been parking there, then you may receive an infringement. We'll probably ask you to leave first, but if you don't comply.
Not fair enough.
It was a sensible then.
Generally, I'm trying to sum it.
Yeah.
I mean, for example's sake, we had a request from the move the grass verge outside the hall, the church hall, because the old women that park right out. 99% of the cases.
Clarifying. The ladies of the district.
People will park outside who go to spinning group and knitting groups, ITs and things like that, tend to be female. Some of them are elderly, don't like to walk very far, so they like to park right outside. They get stuck on the grass verge, and a request was made, can we degrass that area and set it? And a request was put through, and it's probably in a bottom drawer somewhere in someone's file, but that's a case in point in Woodville.
So yeah, through Your Worship.
You use your common sense, I take it.
We try to, we always do. And any request like that would need to go through, I guess, to the rating team. Would look at, take a look at it, and if they need to seal it, they can probably would. We deal with enforcement.
Thanks for that, Jim. And look, I've highlighted grass verges where it will lead to damage in the grass verge. I can see that being quite the contentious issue on what one person views as damage. And, you know, some people, they mow that verge, they're very passionate about it. So I look forward to the consultation on that one. So Councillor Johns has moved the recommendation on page 142 from 1.1 to 1.6. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Long. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Joelle. You can tell we're very passionate about bylaws here.
Right.
Get me a coffee.
Thank you. See ya.
We'll move to item 9.6, deliberations on the waste management and minimisation plan consultation.
Page
129. Welcome, Hamish.
Thank you, Tracy. I would like to thank Ellie again for writing the paper for us on our behalf. Joe is unfortunately on leave. We've managed to convince her to take some time off, so she's doing so. So I'm here in her absence. I'll certainly try and answer any questions you have, and we'll take the report as read. As you'll see as you go through it, there's, I guess, responses to each of the suggestions, that sort of the themes that came up in the consultation. In general terms, there's nothing really to change in the waste management minimisation plan. A lot of those ideas are either in there, or they're things that we're going to take on board and look into But nothing that means that the document needs to change substantially. So happy to take any questions.
Got a couple of comments, I guess. For me, 7 submissions on something that, is, I'm really passionate about this. I guess in busyness, I did drop this to a few people that I know. It's an area that we've certainly got for a lot of improvement, and I was looking forward to this. So I was disappointed in that, which is why I'm keen, just to have a look at those, the community consultation and engagement plans. I think that a couple of comments that I did have in reading the document, one of the recommendations from the officers, 5.3.1, the last line of that paragraph, that the end processor, and it was important that they minimise the environmental footprint of their service by utilising existing transport where possible. And that's one of the challenges that Tararua does have, is, because of our, our distance between our towns. So I don't want to see us penalised for that. But at the same time, there was just around the pig scraps, and I think the comment or the recommendation there was, that there was rules around that. But I noticed the community op shop here is doing that anyway, and I thought, what a fantastic practice. So I don't want us to put barriers up because there are rules around that. Those people that are receiving those scripts, they care for their animals too. So I did just wanted to acknowledge that there's some great community schemes on board. So I look forward to this, and I certainly look forward to potentially having a day where people can take TVs and some of those more expensive items in, because you do notice a few of those being dumped around the district are hard and they're expensive to get rid of. So there's a lot of work gone in, and I know that Joe's incredibly passionate about this. So I look forward to it, but I look forward to the plan not being a document that's in anyone's drawer and living and breathing by this. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add to that on page 133, just seeing that the things that were suggested by the submitters who have been thanked, which I think is awesome, have been introduced, the dropping off of the batteries, and that was what I was going to say, the e-waste, to actually provide those things based on those submissions, actually tells the public that we actually do listen. Thank you.
Actually, I'm supportive of this, but I note your comments, but I think we've had a lot of bylaws for the public to consider and a lot of work going on, but this document would bury the public really. The waste minimisation process has gone on for a long time, and it's buried us on various. So on the whole, the general, if there was something really controversial in there that was picked out, but to ask the public, quite honestly, over a month of it, so I can understand why only 5 turned up. To be honest, it is a very difficult process, and we probably did. I think the staff and ourselves have done all right to get to here. I can understand the lack of public interest, though.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. And look, I think there's some great infographics and bits. I understand the plan's pretty big. I fully take that on board. Right, Councillor John.
I have to say, back on 132 and 5.3.1, page 133 and 133. A number of councils, quite a number of councils have got onto soft plastic collection points. And if there's one thing that I get asked from time to time about recycling is, why don't we collect, is there no way we can collect soft plastics? They've got this fence post outfit somewhere up in Tuakau or somewhere, wherever it is. And why can't they do it down here? That sort of thing. And I get more questions on that than any, not glass or anything else. I noticed that the advice from officers is that is happening elsewhere, but that's it. It's not suggesting that we look at it. Should we look at it?
through you, Tracy, I want to address that one. So there is a company that is working with supermarkets and other retailers to do that. And from our perspective, we're best to jump on that bandwagon. So we're going to be having discussions with the likes of New World for Dannyburg and maybe even Paitoa, just to create those drop-off points. There is a bit of logistics to work around that. It's not particularly practical for us to collect it and sift it out as the general recycling collection. That would make it a fairly difficult process for manual. So we're better to piggyback on that. So it's definitely in the ether.
Yes, I guess the issue for me is there are a lot of people who want to do the best thing by recycling and get frustrated by soft plastics not having to put that in the rubbish. They feel guilty about it. There'd be just as many who couldn't give a shit either way. However, our job is to encourage people to recycle, and the more they recycle, the better. And if you say, well, you can recycle that, but not those things, then people adopt a pretty blasé attitude generally about recycling. So I guess that leave it at that. It'll come to me.
Puppy like us, we're all recovering.
That was Councillor Brink Allen. Hamish,
Can I just quickly respond to that? So it is a bit of a balancing act, because every service we offer to the community will cost council more. So we're trying to balance off the uptake of these things. The recent example over in one of our neighbouring districts was the trial of the green waste, or the food scraps, which cost that council significant amount of money just to do the trial, and the uptake was so low that it wasn't worth doing. So for the handful of people that would take these things up, we have to be a little bit careful. So if there's already a scheme that we can tack onto, like the one this company that does go to supermarkets, then that's probably a good first step, because it's not a cost to council as such. We'll certainly go out there and promote it, and those ideas sort of need to come to their conclusion before we invest ratepayer money into.
The other point I was going to make was, the other criticism I get constantly is, for example, meat trays, plastic meat trays that are non-recyclable. Plastic wrappers around things that are non-recyclable. They're the things that really people. Is there anything we can do as a council to encourage the food suppliers and others that are putting their product out in unacceptable packaging to do something?
Certainly, we're advocating for better materials to be used. I guess the good thing is that there's now national standards that have outlined what can and can't be recycled, and that's expected to encourage the industry to change. But we're pushing for that too.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillors, we have a recommendation on page 109. Sorry, Councillor Wallace, have you got a question?
Two quick things. One's on your fruit flies. The fruit flies they tried that recommendation about, you didn't say fruit flies, I did. So don't look so perplexed. They're coming out the wrong way. Yeah, they did that in Auckland, and everyone stopped doing green waste because the whole suburb got inundated with fruit flies. So going forward, that probably will not happen here. And secondly, your supermarket facility will not probably work here, on the mere fact of health and safety. You can't go into that, onto those premises, because and I think a compression, if you're ever going to do it, you just buy one of those presses. It's not a big outlay, but I think it's the other side of it. It's the processing of the plastic before it gets to the press is where your cost is.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Wallace.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. The food waste has been tried in Auckland and it was a great uptake for the first month or two. After that, it crashed. So it was a burner. And the other thing is the waste or the recycling. And there's a massive cost to it with transport, sorting and transport, and it's a difficult one. But I agree with some of these councillors talking about the ratepayers not being interested, but they will be when they can see what it's costing to get rid of some of this waste products. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Long. Councillor Woods.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. I've a few things that have been said around the table. I completely concur, although perhaps wouldn't have spoken from the grave that Councillor Kerry was referring to in terms of buried in it. Can I just make a comment? I'm delighted with the approach that our officers and staff have had towards this consultation piece. I think they probably knew that because of the consultations already going on with other bylaws that there were some key parts of this that as you speak so passionately, Mayor Tracy, about being committed to. But I do wish to commend the staff through you, Hamish, that each of these recommendations, it says we're noting that the officers will investigate options, but balance that with anything additional comes at a cost. So please pass on, I'm sure, all of our sincere thanks to the team.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Right. Can I have a recommendation for on page 129, 1.1 to 1.3, moved by Councillor Wallace, seconded by Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Also recommendations in section 5 of that report to be included.
Councillor Wallace and Councillor Johns, are you happy to move that includes the advice and recommendations from officers on 130, but this got the recommendations here on 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, and 5.8, 5.9, and 5.10.
Could I ask a question? The only one that scares me is that 5.4 batteries. How are you gonna? Where are you gonna drop them? Because batteries kind of can explode. I know they're only pen-like battery. You're talking AA, AAA. Is that what? I know they're talking them, but so we supply a secure site.
They will have to consider those. Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Wallace and Councillor Johns have moved and seconded that with those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Right. Right, we're moving on to item 9.8, and we're welcoming in David Pettigrew for the rationalisation of land and buildings project. Welcome, Carter, and to Raj, and this is a project that everyone is very excited about.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. So this report before you is about the project to rationalise our land and buildings. So this is a project in the LTP which we must do in year 1. And the purpose of the project is to look or to have a better understanding of our land and our buildings. And the purpose would be to look at where we can repurpose or rationalize, or in the case of buildings, maybe make some improvements wherever they're needed. We have engaged Exist Limited to help us manage and deliver the project because they already have been involved in the reserve management plan, so they have a lot of knowledge, existing knowledge, so this is going to be easier and quicker. And what we are here to do today really is to take you through the scope, the approach, and show you a sample of what the deliverable, the final report will look like, and we welcome your feedback or your comments on this. David is online and he will take us through a PowerPoint presentation, a short one, and also will show you what the final deliverable will look like. David, can you hear us? Good?
Yeah, I can. Morning, everybody. Would you like me to share my screen?
Yes, please, David, that'd be better. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Just forgive me, I'm going to look up to my left because I'm going to share that screen. And here we go. So thanks. This is a little bit of a wordy presentation. I won't read it word for word, but you've just heard the purpose. So I'm just going to run through what the review will include and just a couple of important little pieces that you'll want to know about. So as Kata said, we'll be looking at community buildings and parks and reserves. And importantly, that can legally be considered for disposal. I'll talk a little bit about land status in a minute. We'll look at a whole lot of different things, but importantly, the service need for both the land and the buildings and other site-specific issues to help inform decisions on whether we rationalise or not. We'll also, in the report, provide some recommendations and also some information regarding legal process. So when you're rationalising council-owned assets, it's a little bit different from private property, as you know. So there's some statutory processes that will need to go through, and that'll depend on the background and how the land's held and how it came to be. So different timeframes and things associated with that. So what we can rationalise, so it's only the land that council owns. Now, interestingly, through the reserve management plan and the land status and classification project, we've identified that a lot of land, particularly reserve land, is derived from the Crown, so can't really be can't be considered for disposal by council. Often it's been council's been appointed to control and manage, or it might have been vested in trust, which gives you lots of administration powers, but when it comes to sale, it would have to go back to the Crown to do that. Oops, sorry, just jumped forward a little bit there. So just a quick overview of what we found. So we had 29 parcels that we looked at, and 219 were Crown derived. 20 have no title. We're still looking into some of those. This likely means that they've come from the Crown. Usually they're really old pieces of land. And so we're left with 90 Crown-owned, council-owned pieces of land. So I'll just make this a little bit bigger here. So we did a initial look through and found 60, we sort of removed 63 parcels. This is just reserve land from consideration for the following reasons. There's some couple of pieces of land that were gifted, and part of the deed of gift means that we can't dispose of it. There was a number of esplanade reserves, so along waterways, coastal edges, which have high environmental values, and they often come through land subdivision, so again, a little bit difficult to dispose of. Cemetery land, we just discounted, and also land where there's an existing high use and obvious service need. And then there was some other lands with very high ecological values, Patterson Bush, for example. Since we did that initial review, the community facilities team has identified another 69 parcels of land. They're not necessarily parks and reserves land. I think there's a lot of gravel reserves in there, but we're just having a look through some of those as well, just to check the underlying ownership and to see if they can be considered as well. So moving on to the methodology for the community buildings. So there's 76 community buildings that have been looked at. Again, the teams applied some considerations. What's the use like? What's the current condition? Is there? What's the future capital costs looking like? And we'll look into that in a lot more detail. But that was just to give an initial reduce the list somewhat. There's some examples there in that second main bullet point down. So those with high use, fire and emergency, rural, solid waste facilities, public convenience, and domain board halls were all discounted from consideration. Now, what we'll do after this meeting, depending on the outcome of this meeting, but the idea is that there's a few different stages. So we've developed some of those lists. We will do some individual investigations into each site, and we'll prepare a report that gives you an overview and some recommendations, but we'll also give you all the detail you need to make an informed decision about whether you want to proceed with rationalising each different piece of land. So I will, and there'll be a workshop ahead of a council meeting for that, and I'll just give you a quick example of the type of information that we'll include in the report. So this is purely fictitious, but we'll obviously have a description and an image of what the land is we're talking about, some property information, if there's an occupation, whether it's leased out or not, what the topography is, the rateable land value. So that'll give you a rough idea of what the land's worth or potentially worth, whether there's any income, maintenance costs, what the operational budget is currently, any expenses that we're forecasting, probably less so for reserve land, but more so for community buildings. Also around the service need, okay, what's being used for at the moment, what's going to be used for in the future, how does it fit with the other assets that we've got, similar assets in the network. Any constraints, so whether there's any cultural heritage constraints or values, any environmental values, any easements that are on the land, notable trees, any hazards or district plan overlays that might be relevant. And we'll probably put a little comment in about commercial desirability, and noting that we're not obviously real estate agents, but all things considered, sometimes there's some fairly obvious hurdles or the complete opposite. It could be really desirable for development and therefore sale. So those are the main things. And again, we'll definitely add in at the bottom if there's any legislative constraints, any disposal timeframes and costs. For example, if land's held as reserve, part of the process will be to revoke that Reserves Act status, and that doesn't actually sit with the council, even though the council might own that land. That will have to go to the Minister of Conservation to determine. What the minister will do is determine if the values for which the land was reserved initially still exist or not, and he will make a decision based on that. So it's for us to basically provide all the information and a recommendation that we want to dispose of this piece of land, and then the minister has to make the final. So we'll put all the information in about that too. So that was a very quick overview, but is there any questions?
Yes, there are. Right, can I go Councillor Wards, Councillor Chase, Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Thank you, David. I've been so excited about this project coming up. So let me give you, I know you've proposed there a template around something, you know, that is imaginary, but even just this past weekend, we had an event out at the Pongaroa Hall, and I was approached by a number of community members saying, what's the council going to do with Waione Hall? It's had a few floods through it, it's been red stickered. So there's a bit of debate going on around the table as to council only owns the land, or is it a domain board? How are you going to dispose of it, Sharon? And I was saying, well, we're about to undertake this review. So my question, I mean, even though there was only a little line there, David, I'm trying to understand how wide would be the relevant disposal processes? Because there was 3 people at that table and each of them had a different view of what should happen, that council should sell the building, have it transported off. It's probably okay for recycling of native timbers in there. How wide can we, when we get to that stage, offer possibilities for a community or a private sale or a rejuvenation of it? Is there a heap of options, or are we going to be fairly limited?
I think, well, just talking about the process for a start. So there's always an element of community consultation that'll have to happen whenever council wants to dispose of council-owned land. So that's a statutory obligation. So there'll be an opportunity for people to be involved there. I guess as part of this project, particularly with community buildings, what we're going to be looking at is reasonably high level, but what's the condition and what's the realistic costs, you know, that are coming up for council to keep this building up? Because as you'll probably well know, there's different things, building warrant of fitnesses, you know, earthquake regulation. There's all these things that come into cost to maintain some of these buildings. So I think reserves are slightly different to community buildings in that without a sort of strategy around community buildings, this is why when I put up that slide before, what we've sort of considered. So often if you have a community building strategy, it will take a holistic view of the district and each town, what you've got, what you need, what the demographics are, what the projected future use, etc., will be, and then kind of the things that can be disposed of kind of fall out the bottom of that. This is sort of a bit of a truncated process where we sort of have to do that at a very high level initially, and there's probably a little bit of risk with that, because if you end up selling the wrong piece of land or the wrong building, it's going to be expensive to buy it back in the future. But I think, back to your original question, how wide can it go? Well, we're going to have to get the community views on it at some point.
Yeah.
Yep.
That answers that one for me. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wards. Councillor Chase?
Thank you, Tracy. This whole assessment, will it include land that was taken under the Public Works Act? And will we be able to see whether it's still being used for the purpose it was taken for?
Very good question. And off the top, I'm pretty sure we haven't included any land that was taken under the Public Works Act. And and that's not for any particular reason, not because it is was taken under the Public Works Act, but I'd probably recommend keeping those pieces of land separate and maybe going through a different process for that, because as you know, there's offer back considerations when something's been taken under the Public Works Act. So we did come across a few pieces of land in the land status review for the reserve management plan, and I didn't come across any, from memory, that that weren't being used for why they were taken. But from memory, I don't think there has been any included in this process just yet.
Thank you. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Thanks very much, team. This is really exciting to be, and I suppose to see some of the methodology and the process that we'll be going through. So a big thanks to Exist, a big thanks to our facilities team as well for the huge amount of work that they would have done and will need to continue to do on this. My question, I'm absolutely endorse the process that we're going through. My question, though, is more around understanding some timelines from our perspective. I know that we're looking to have this done within year 1 of the LTP. Bring it on. And then my second question to that, and I think it's actually just as important for us as councillors to have an understanding of when we should be expecting reporting updates and how we expect those to be flowing through, because it's something I'm really keen to be keeping an eye on, having the ability to sort of ask questions, see where they're at, but also being able to share some of these milestones with our community. Now, I know we'll need to consult on that, but you know, this is a big deal in a whole lot of ways. So just wondering if there could be any comment on understanding some timelines, but also understanding how officers are intending to report updates to us.
Through you, Matt Tracy. The timeline we discussed initially, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, please, was around 4 months. 4 months from the start of the project. And that's really just to get the a quick wins, quick report, hence why we went through the methodology and just taken out, in terms of reporting back to council, more than happy to do it as however you like, but we have, so as you would have seen, David had stages. So at the end of each stage, you could consider a milestone. So we could report on the milestones, or more than happy to give you regular updates, you know, through the council, through this council. So however you'd like, we really are keen to keep you up to date and in touch with what we are doing to make sure we're on the right track. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just, if I could just add to that, that's for the reporting, that's, exactly right. In terms of how long it takes to actually dispose of the land, quite a different, or the buildings, quite a different story. And probably just like to be really clear at this point that can take a long time. Just due to the processes, the public process that we need to go through.
Thanks, it's a great start. Councillors, can I ask that this forms part of your report back to your community committees and community boards? It's really important that we take them on this journey as well. That would be appreciated. But it's a piece of work that when we were out talking about the long-term plan and what council was doing in the future and what we were looking at to try and rationalise and save costs within our district, what we could do differently, the rationalisation of buildings and land and the integration of services were the 2 key things that we're pointing out. So really, really awesome to see this so quickly back to the table and that action being taken. So really enjoy that. Are there any further queries, questions on the scope? Right. So the recommendations on page 167, and I'm going to look to this side of the table, moved by Councillor Gilmore and seconded by Councillor Wards. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thanks, carried. Thank you very, very much.
My home turns up on this, there's trouble up there. I'm done.
Well, I think we'll do move to item 9.9, the capital expenditure budget carry forwards, and then after that, I'll adjourn us for lunch.
Mike. Thanks.
Welcome, Sarah.
Morena, Your Worship and councillors. As a councillor just kindly pointed out, I am not Mike. He is away at a conference and I have taken the short straw and I'm presenting to you the carry forwards. I won't talk about it in too much detail because you'll never guess it, but when we get to the 12-month report, I'll be talking capital expenditure again as well. So one thing that I really did want to highlight, because as you know, numbers are my thing and they really get me excited. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this position. On page 173, graph 3.5. I just want to talk about this a little bit. Between the PMO and finance, we've been working quite hard in this space for quite a period of time. And it's so exciting to see that graph come down so much over the last couple of years, well, this year in particular. It comes down to a really, the LTP process, the way in which the CapEx was programmed within the long-term plan. The budgets that we're proposing to carry forward are for projects that are either underway or we have a contract signed and we're committed to complete those. I have every faith that we will deliver these. When you get to the CapEx report after lunch, you'll see the improvement that we've made in this space with the delivery of our projects. Was there any questions? I'll keep it short and sweet. I know I'm between you and lunch. So is there any questions?
Yeah, definitely. Team.
Shows you the framework coming into fruition and support from the ELT driving this as well with us. Thank you.
Very, very good result. So thank you. So that is moved. The recommendation on page 169, 1.1 and 1.2 moved by Councillor Sutherland and seconded by Councillor Franklin. All those in favour, please say aye. Against.
Well done.
Okay, councillors, we will break for lunch and come back. I realise that. And we'll come back at 1 o'clock. Thank you.